Jeff, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. How are you, brother?
Doing great. I'm happy to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, me too. I love taking a deep dive into some of the tools that we have on this planet that can help us navigate this adventure that we're on in long-term regenerative health if we choose to go down that path. And I've been fascinated about the tools that are out there. And being a chef, food has always been sort of one of my primary focuses. And I haven't really talked too much or discovered what Zeolite is about. And I know that you've spent a lot of time and invested a lot of energy into understanding this unique product that is out there for us. That is, I believe, naturally created by Mother Earth. And so I'd love to take a deep dive into this for our viewers and listeners, and especially for myself, into understanding how we can use this and why we should be using this product that may or may not be a food. Maybe we'll start with that. Is zeolite considered a food? And perhaps talk to us about what it actually is, and has it been used in a way through perhaps ancient um, our ancestors in the past, or is it a new thing? Sorry, there's a multi-pronged question there.
No, it's okay. It's okay. So yeah, I've never, no one's ever asked me if it's a food before. So that's a first. I guess it depends on your definition of food. It's not going to be something that has caloric value or protein, fat, carbs, or any of the macro nutrients. So I would probably consider it not to be a food. But I mean, there was civilizations that were eating clays and various things. I think they were exclusively eating clays for a period of time. I don't remember where that was or what that was called. So for them, I suppose it was food. So zeolite is a naturally occurring mineral that is mined, and it's been around for a long time. And what I like about it is it's a solution from nature supercharged by science. Right. So it's always been around, but now that we have advanced manufacturing practices, we can just make it much more effective for human consumption. Right. So that's kind of, and I like to look at that in terms of a lot of different nutraceuticals and nutritional supplements. There's a lot of great things out there. Sometimes it's best just to get them in their whole form, but then sometimes you can take advanced manufacturing practices and extract the medicinal properties from some of these herbs and fruits and vegetables things, and you get a concentrated amount. So it's kind of interesting. That's kind of how I like to look at the supplement industry. And when we're talking about nutraceutical, naturally derived things. So with zeolite, and one thing I'll just clarify quickly is that zeolite is a class of mineral. So when you hear the word zeolite, it's not just one type. There's many naturally occurring types of zeolite, and then there's also synthetic zeolites. So you have to kind of be careful if you're considering a zeolite supplement. You really have to understand what you're getting, because when you're looking at a synthetic zeolite, that's going to be made in a laboratory, and it's not going to be natural, and it's not going to have all the same properties that we're going to talk about today. But just it's a volcanic mineral, so it's the result of the interaction between water and volcanic ash. And then over time, it forms this negatively charged mineral called zeolite. And what's unique about it is that it has this very strong negative ionic charge, which makes it attracted to positively charged elements. And a lot of the toxic elements that we're exposed to and that are in our bodies are positively charged. So this negatively charged mineral goes in and can basically bind or attract these positively charged elements and help remove them from our bodies. And what makes it especially unique is that it doesn't just go in and grab everything that's positively charged, because some of the positively charged elements in our bodies are good, like our essential minerals. It's considered a smart binder or a selective binder because it's able to go in and grab the bad without interfering with the good. And I can get into that now, or we can talk about it later if you want me to stop there.
No, I love it. You mentioned something about that it goes in to our bodies, and because it's negatively charged, it can target some of these so-called bad things that we're exposed to these days. And from a it's so fascinating because supplements is something that I always have a big question mark over. It's And there's so many different philosophies out there. You know, there's the natural side of things where once upon a time, perhaps we could attain everything that we needed to in our environment for us to have long-term regenerative health. Enough time in nature, hunting, gathering and cooking our food in a way that perhaps we really didn't need to rid ourselves of too many things, because once upon a time we didn't live in an environment where we didn't have, you know, um, electromagnetic frequencies, we didn't have pollution, we didn't have additives that were put into our food system, we didn't have the chemicals that were sprayed on our foods, this, that, and the other. So I understand that viewpoint of that we shouldn't really need anything, but perhaps we're living in a very different time now than we were, say, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago, millennia ago. So, how do you, what's your philosophy on where we are right now, 2025, with should we be concerned about what's in our environment? Can our bodies deal with it naturally without having to take supplements? Or do you think we're at that point now where we need to, as you said, use the science that's out there? And I use that word very, very loosely after the last 4 or 5 years,
Right,
because
right.
science, I think, has been, it's a dirty word these days. And I wish it wasn't. Um, but yeah, where are we now, 2025, and what have you noticed about the environment and why these tools such as Zeolite so important for us?
Yeah. So, and just going back to just supplements in general, just think of the word, they're supplements. They're not alternatives or substitutes. So the foundation is the healthy diet and the healthy lifestyle practices. And then we now supplement what we're already doing properly to enhance our health. And as you said, probably 100 years ago, we didn't need any supplements because we were getting everything we needed in our daily lifestyles and we didn't have the additional toxic burden. But now the need for supplementation has grown even more over the years as our daily toxic burden has increased and just the stresses in our lives have increased. So the way I look at it is in the 21st century, detox isn't even an option anymore. We have to do something to take control of our health because we're not going to stay healthy by accident, right? Before you could kind of, most people were just generally healthy without trying too hard. It was just they were living healthier lifestyles. They weren't exposed to what we're exposed to now. Now we have to make a conscious effort just to stay ahead of the curve and to not get chronically ill. So we're kind of at a disadvantage. And I think you mentioned a lot of the things, but there's just the number of stressors that we're faced with in today's day and age are greater than they've ever been in history. When I say the word stressor or stress, I'm referring to anything that makes the body work harder than normal to stay balanced, right? So that could be an emotional stressor, a physical stressor, an environmental toxicant, all the things that our body has to deal with. Those are what I consider stressors, right? So our body has a certain amount of energy that it has for everything that it has going on, right? And when that amount of energy is exceeded by the amount of toxicity or stressors that we're faced with, that's where we come begin developing challenges and where supplementation can be very helpful, right? So the level of supplementation or even the need for supplementation is going to vary greatly from person to person. So if you're able to keep up with your daily dose of toxicity and all the stressors that you're facing on a daily basis, then you probably don't need, or in theory, you wouldn't need supplementation. But if you're not able to keep up with all those things, that's where supplementation comes into play, right? So I never say, ZeoCharge is something everyone needs, or, this supplement or that supplement is something everyone needs. It's always going to be case by case, and it's based on how well is your body naturally functioning and how well is it handling your current living environment, right? And unfortunately, in this day and age, due to so many toxic stressors that are coming at us, it's very difficult to sustain ideal health without some level of supplementation.
Oh, I love that definition and explanation too. So thank you so much. So let's take a little deep dive into zeolite then, because wow, 2025, you go onto Instagram, and if you're following any sort of influencer, and it's an interesting word, influencer, but you are bombarded with a lot of different information that's out there, and especially in regards to detoxing and supplementation. Like I think I went on yesterday onto Instagram, and there would have been 20 different supplements that I saw from peptides to parasite cleansers to this, that, vitamins, minerals. There's a lot, and there's different people out there, like Dave Asprey, who's a wealth of knowledge that takes a lot of supplements and is very open about that, 100, 150 plus a day. People like Brian Johnson that's out there talking about all the different things that we can do. So, number one, can be very expensive if you go down that path, and not everyone has access to those funds to be able to experiment or take these supplements that they believe will give us long-term regenerative health and extend our life. So how do people decipher, I guess, what are the priorities out there in the supplementation range, and how did you come to find that zeolite is one of the priorities for you? And is it the only priority for you? I know I have a habit of this, asking 4 or 5 questions in one
Sorry.
go, but it gives you a nice little weave or thread to be able to piece this together. So, your discovery of zeolite, and why do you believe it is in, whether it be the top 1, 2, 3, 5 things that we should be supplementing with?
Sure. So yeah, and I will say I do think that a lot of people are taking too many supplements. So I will say that my goal is to take as few as possible and just to have supplements that are really enabling the body to work at its highest level. Because I think a lot of supplements are almost like pharmaceuticals where they're trying to substitute for a function in the body, opposed to trying to enhance the body's natural ability to do something. So there's kind of different classes of supplements, but kind of with my journey and just what I see a lot in kind of this natural health industry is that, well, one, it's very similar, like functional medicine in a lot of ways is very similar to allopathic traditional Western medicine, but instead of using the pharmaceuticals, they're using natural remedies, but it's still allopathic, meaning symptoms management. So a lot of times we're still not asking the question, why is this occurring, or getting to the root cause. We're just using a natural remedy for joint pain or a natural remedy for some symptom, opposed to actually getting to the root cause. So I think that's one issue, because with that, you just start stacking supplement after supplement after supplement, and you see practitioner after practitioner after practitioner, and they keep giving you more supplements, and you just never go off of them. And it's just like you keep adding and adding, and then you have this massive amount of supplements, and potentially it's, maybe they're helping, maybe they're causing more harm than good. It just depends. But what I've kind of found is that there's kind of a simple two-step approach for health: out with the bad and in with the good, or at least with supplementation, right? You want to remove the bad and you want to add in the good. And I think too much of the focus in supplementation is putting the good in. So we need all of these isolated minerals. We need all of these vitamins. We need all of these compounds. It's all about putting the good in. But I think priority number one is removing the bad, the various sources of toxicity in our body, because then our body won't need as much of the good, because it can utilize what we're getting from food and it can recycle those good nutrients better on its own. And a lot of the supplements people take are things that the body is producing, things like NAD or glutathione or various things. But if we remove sources of toxicity, we won't necessarily need those, or won't need them in as high of levels, because our body will naturally be producing those things greater, right? So it's like glutathione, for example. It's a very popular detox supplement. So glutathione is kind of a master detoxifier, antioxidant in the body. And a lot of people will take like a liposomal or some form of glutathione to directly put glutathione or in your body. But then there's like NAC, N-acetylcysteine, which people take, and that helps your body naturally produce glutathione better on its own. But then you could take something like ZeoCharge, which is reducing various sources of oxidative stress, and your body won't be using up all of its glutathione on that oxidative stress, so the levels of glutathione rise on its own. So there's all these different approaches, but I think it starts with removing as many sources of toxicity as you can, and that will enable your body to work at a higher level because it's not overburdened. So I think
That
for me, that's the priority. So with zeolite,
and,
go
and
ahead.
I'm just going to interrupt for that could be the best definition I've ever heard of supplementation because, as I said, big question mark over it because it because I've heard that, and my belief is, and belief is a strong word, is that sometimes if we are putting too much of one thing in, it can stop our body from producing it naturally as well. And the way that you've just explained that really resonates home for me. That makes a lot more sense. Getting the stuff out so that our bodies, our intelligent bodies, can do the things that they're meant to do, without holding their hand too much and saying, putting more and more and more and more and more of this stuff in. So I just want to thank you for that because that does it. It sounds like common sense.
I think sometimes we try to outsmart our bodies. There's all these isolated scientific studies and things, and we say we need this because this is going to help with this metabolic pathway or this detox pathway or whatever. But we're never going to be smarter than our bodies, right? So I think when it comes to detox supplementation, that's very common where we say, okay, we need this form of B for methylation. We need, this for phase one detoxification. We need this for phase two. And we piece together these detox protocols based on these theories and studies. But really, if you just start removing sources of toxicity at the core or reduce the exposure to the toxicity, your body's going to have all that stuff figured out on its own. And a lot of times you won't need those isolated nutrients. So that's potentially an unpopular opinion, but I've seen that because a lot of people will say, well, I can't detox because I have this genetic mutation, or, I need to take all these different minerals and stuff. But I really haven't seen that, at least in our case studies program with the ZeoCharge, where if you can remove the sources of toxicity, gene pathways start working better. Everything just starts working better. So I think, and with detox, getting into detox supplements, by design, most detox supplements will add stress to your body, right? So it's very common to experience detox reactions, headaches, nausea, joint pain, these type of things. And people say, well, this is fantastic. It means the protocol is working. But what it also means is that stress is being added to your body, and those symptoms are signs that your body is not effectively dealing with that level of toxicity that's been kind of pushed into your processing center. So a lot of people aren't even able to take these detox supplements for that reason, because if they're at max capacity, kind of in their stress threshold of what they can handle, especially someone that has, mold illness or Lyme disease or some more chronic illness, a lot of times they're considered too sick to detox. So they're not able to do these things because detox adds stress to the body, and then they're not even able to handle that stress, and it could trigger a lot of issues. So the nice thing about ZeoCharge is what it's doing is it's removing stress on the body. So it's a binder. It's going in and it's just binding to heavy metals, environmental toxicants, plastics, metabolic waste products, all these things that are currently stressing out your body. It's binding to those. And then that's releasing a lot of energy for your body to do what it needs to do. So opposed to going in and trying to rip out metals from organs and things and adding stress to the body, it's literally just grabbing what is currently floating around, what your body has to deal with every day. And then your body has extra energy to do what it wants to. And generally what the body will do is start dumping metals and various toxins from organs and from tissue, because now there's room to receive it in the processing center, which is what your body's currently exposed to. So that's kind of why ZeoCharge and Zeolite is just a different approach to detox, because instead of adding stress to the body, it's reducing stress on the body, and then the body will add stress back at its own pace. So very interesting.
Let's talk about how you discovered this then. Obviously, because did it happen by accident? Did someone suggest it to you? Was it a book that you read? Was it a friend that healed themselves through using zeolite? Tell me about the adventure that you went on to discover zeolite, and were you perhaps skeptical when you first heard of it?
Sure. Yeah, I don't think it was by accident. I think I'm just in general, I think God's kind of led me on a path and just opened up one door. And I try to, keep my eyes open for doors that open up. And when they open up, I walk through them. All right. So at the time that I discovered Zeolite, I was really into the biohacking community. So I had my own center actually with, just like full body cryotherapy and sauna and hydrogen, PEMF, oxygen, all neurofeedback, all that stuff, right? Vibe plates. And that was all fantastic. But the problem is it was coming and it was helping reduce the stressors in people's lives, but they have to keep doing them every single day or multiple times a week to keep mitigating that stress. But most of them were really not that effective at removing the root cause. So then I said, okay, we need more effective detox solutions. And I was using humic and fulvics and algaes and infrared sauna and all these things, but they were just, I didn't realize it at the time how limited they really were until I started utilizing zeolite. But anyway, I think I had heard about zeolite for the first time on some health summit or some podcast or something, someone talking about zeolite. So I got into it, got connected with it, started experimenting with it, and realized that, okay, there's really something to this. It's very powerful. But then I realized that it wasn't really being used properly because what I discovered was that people that were taking microdoses, very low doses of the zeolite, which is a lot of times the people that are very sensitive, like with mast cell activation syndrome or something, they start with the super low dose because they don't want to aggravate their bodies too much. But the people that were doing that were getting all these detox reactions. Those were the ones feeling worse. But the people that were taking much higher doses, we're talking like 100, 200, 300 times the dose, those people weren't getting any of the symptoms. So that kind of led me onto this thought of, okay, what's going on with the dosing? And I was already very curious about dosing of supplements because the previous company I had, it was all about the therapeutic dose for nutritional extracts. Because in the research, a lot of times you need 100 times the dose of what's on the label of these ingredients. And you just never get it because they're so incredibly expensive. And it's very interesting. So I was already curious about dose. So after a lot of experimentation, I discovered that, yeah, the lower doses of zeolites are actually more likely to result in the detox reactions than the high doses. So now I have a lot of information on it. There's a bunch of info on the website, the zeolite dosing paradox or the higher dose theory of zeolite. It's like a 30-page document where I go through all the theories behind it. But basically, the people that take a low dose, it goes in and it kind of stirs things up, but then the body has to deal with that mess that was made. So like there's enough zeolite to go in and bind things, but there's not enough to finish the job. If you take a higher dose, it still goes in and kind of makes a mess, but there's enough available zeolite cages to finish cleaning up. So like either way, it makes a mess, but with a low dose, your body has to clean up the mess itself. With the higher dose, there's enough zeolite to finish the job. So that's the super condensed short version. Um, but that's one of the most important things about zeolite as well. And one of the reasons why a lot of people don't get good results with it is because they're taking micro doses of zeolite, whether it's a liquid zeolite or a nano zeolite or even a powder, and they're just taking like a sip of it. That's where people have problems, and they assume that it's working great because they're getting terrible symptoms, but really it's just an inefficient detox. Where if they take 100 times that dose, like with our powder, you mix it in a glass of water, the people that take one sip a lot of times will get a headache or some sort of issue, but then the next day when they take the entire glass, they get no symptoms. So the headache was not a sign that, oh, this detox is working. It was a sign that it was an inefficient detox. So ideally, when you detox, you want to either feel nothing or you want to feel better. So that's another unpopular opinion. A lot of people think that these detox symptoms are unavoidable and you have to go through these terrible Herxheimer and detox reactions. But in a lot of cases, you don't have to. Sometimes they are unavoidable, but what we found is even people that have never been able to take any other detox supplement without terrible reactions have been able to take high dose ZeoCharge with minimal or no reactions. So that's why one of the reasons it's been really a big game changer for the industry is that it's been enabling people to detox that weren't able to detox before because it's gentler.
Did you have health issues yourself
Yeah, yeah,
that that helped? The zeolite helped through your process?
yeah. It's not a fix all. So that's the thing. It's, I mean, some people, I would say personally, I experience less benefit from zeolite than most of the people that take it, which is interesting. I mean, I still take 6 scoops every night. I've been doing it for years, but like some people just can't even function without it, or they feel so terrible without it. And it just like it kind of depends on what you're exposed to and your circulating level of toxicity, because a lot of people when they're taking it and they feel better within the first 3 days, they think it's because it's removing metals from their brain and organs. That's not why they're feeling better. They're feeling better because it's binding to things that your immune system and the rest of your body was processing, and it was overburdening your body every single day. So by binding to those things, it basically just lowered your total body stress burden and allowed your body to breathe. So it kind of calms the storm in the body. So those are the people that basically they feel better immediately. The people that are removing metals from organs and things from long-term metal accumulation from amalgam fillings or whatnot, those people generally don't feel better overnight. That's more of a 3 to 6 month or even longer process because it's a slow removal of metals from organs. So I'm not the type of person who takes it and I immediately feel better. But I'm taking it more for the long-term metal removal, and I do testing regularly, and it is detoxing me. So, but I don't really feel better or worse on it. The only thing I generally notice is that when I don't take it, I actually am a little more constipated. So my stools are actually worse when I don't take it. So that's really the only thing I've noticed. But for a lot of people, especially the people that are in that situation where they're highly symptomatic on a daily basis, when they take it, they can notice the difference right away because it's just calming the storm in the body.
How does it eliminate out of the body? Is it through the feces? Is it through the stools? Is it urine? Or tell me
Yeah,
about
yeah, I think it's
the
primary.
elimination.
Yeah, I think it's primarily feces and then some urine as well. Um, I mean, the thing like the metals and all the other toxicants are going to be excreted through both, along with skin and other detox pathways, because a lot of the way that the zeolite is working is not necessarily by directly grabbing everything, but it's by grabbing a lot of things. And I think a lot of what it's binding to is your body's own waste products. So, when we think of toxicity, generally we think of heavy metals, we think of plastics, we think of things that are coming in from outside, the environmental toxicity. But I think in terms of amount of toxicity, the greatest amount of toxicity is actually produced by our own bodies. And that's going to be metabolic waste products, things like ammonia that we just produce from protein digestion, things like urea, things like histamine, free radicals. And then if we have microbial overgrowth, those microbes are releasing waste products that are also poisoning us. So those are the highest level of toxicity that we're facing to. And I'm not saying they're worse than the others. I think the others are worse, but those are taking up a lot of our detox energy and our body has to prioritize that. So then when we have these metals and other things coming in from the environment, if our body doesn't have enough energy to clear it all, it has to do something and it just tucks those environmental toxins into tissue because there's a natural storage unit for heavy metals and toxins, and that's fat. So that's the problem. If we have these high level, so the healthier someone is, the better their natural detox functions are. And if someone has a complex illness and they don't have enough detox energy, then they're going to be accumulating over time lots of heavy metals and things because their body just can't support detox in a way a healthy person can. So interestingly, a lot of people, when they become chronically ill, they get tested or they just assume they have heavy metal toxicity, which they generally do. But then they assume that that's the root cause of their chronic illness. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But a lot of times, I think it's actually the result of the chronic illness. So if someone develops autoimmunity or some sort of issue from a completely unrelated factor, they're going to start accumulating heavy metals because now their body doesn't have as much energy as it did before to deal with that environmental toxicity coming in. So
Gotcha.
it's kind of a cause and effect. But then once you start accumulating these heavy metals, then it's going to contribute to the chronic disease state and make things worse as well. So it's kind of interesting. But the things coming in, so there's the daily dose of toxins are the things that are coming in from outside and the things that are coming in from inside or being produced from within. And the ZeoCharge is binding to all of that. And then the body naturally is going to start releasing things at its own pace. So that's why the heavy metals and other toxins are going to come out of all the detox pathways because a lot of them are not even going to be bound by the zeolite. They're just going to be naturally released by the body because now the body has energy to deal with it. So that's why it can go through urine, skin, feces, or whatever it's going to go through.
I got it. Yeah, I understand that. So the body's always, can I be as can I simplify this to say that the body is always dealing with the priority first? Whatever the priority in the body is autoimmune disease or whatever it may be, it is trying to deal with that to bring it to a state of homeostasis. But if we have excess, I guess, things to deal with, that it might put those other things on the back burner to deal with the priority. Is that too
Yeah.
simplified
No,
an
that's
explanation?
perfect. That's perfect because then I talk about that a lot is priorities because the first thing to consider is that detox is up to the body. So a lot of people think detox is up to the supplement protocol they're taking or the sauna or whatever it is. But if the body doesn't want to let go of a heavy metal or some environmental toxin, it's not going to let go of it no matter what you do. So ultimately, the goal of detox is to get your body to naturally release these things from organs and tissue because otherwise because of the priority because the body is more focused on short-term survival over long-term thrival, right? So
Hmm.
if you have heavy metals in your brain, your body actually sometimes keeps them in the brain and would prefer to have them in your brain, even though it's deteriorating brain tissue, opposed to trying to remove them, where they're then exposed to the other systems of the body. And then there's strong immune reactions against it, resulting in a lot of inflammation. Because when you have these metals and things tucked in tissue, they're largely hidden from the immune system. They're just stuck there. So they're deteriorating that tissue, but they're not necessarily causing systemic issues. When you try to remove them, now they're exposed, and that's a lot of times why you get these terrible detox reactions. So that's why a lot of times, even when you take synthetic chelators or various things to detox things from your brain, a lot of times, one, you might get terribly ill because it's working and it's pushing it out, but there's no room to receive it because you haven't done anything to bind what your body's currently processing. Two, your body might not let go of those things because if the body says, I'm not going to let go of this mercury from my brain because I'm scared that it's going to be too toxic on the way out, it's just going to get stuck there and it's not going to go. So some people think that they're detoxing on these protocols, but they might not be detoxing. So that's why I
Gotcha.
think the key to detox is to work with the body, because the goal is to get your body to naturally do it for you. Because we're all detoxing at all times. It's just to what extent. We want to optimize our body's natural detox pathways. And really the number one key to detox is to get healthy, which people say that's completely not helpful at all. But really, so it's whatever, if there's something that's just draining your health, addressing that thing first is going to be the best thing to optimize your detox pathways because it's freeing up energy. So if that's an emotional issue, dealing with that is going to be the most important thing. If it's breast implants, if it's a root canal treated tooth, whatever it may be, dealing with that first is going to be a priority because the healthier you get, the better your body's natural detox functions, and then the less supplementation you need.
Gotcha. So fasting is a popular tool that people use for detoxing, and I'd like to get your take on your theory on fasting and why people benefit. And my wife and I have been running a wellness retreat here in Australia for the last 4 years, and we do cooking retreats, wellness retreats, fasting retreats, which is pretty interesting coming to um, a chef's retreat where, where there's no food on offer except a little bit of broth. Um, so because my understanding is fasting, the elimination of food gives us more energy, less input for the body to detox, if I can use that word. And so, two questions: is is fasting beneficial for detoxification, or is there some caveat in that which um, perhaps is the same thing as you're talking about, where it just gets redistributed? If it is detoxing, it doesn't have a pathway to get out there without the zeolite. And then the second question is taking zeolite with a fast, like supercharging the process, like getting into the state of autophagy and ketosis quicker. Does it work better by having zeolite as a part of that protocol for fasting? Or if we're using zeolite, do we never need to fast? Three questions.
Okay, so we'll start with the last one. I wouldn't say that. I mean, I think fasting has been used forever, and it can be a very effective tool. And I mean, of course, you have to be in a good position to do so. But so I don't think zeolite's a substitute for fasting. Um, I think a lot of people have used zeolite in combination with fasting. And I think one of the reasons is because when we're consuming fiber, fiber is a natural binder. So when we're eating the fruits and the vegetables and these things, they have binding capacity to help bind to some of the toxicity we're faced with. So when we're not eating anything, we don't have any binder coming in. So if we're taking zeolite, we're basically adding in a binder without adding in the calories or messing up the autophagy or any of the other stuff. So that's why I think zeolite, especially for people that are doing, even people doing like carnivore and things, zeolite's very helpful because they're not getting fiber. They need some sort of binder to help assist with the removal of toxins. Um, Fasting, I think fasting is great. It's kind of interesting. I think there is a caveat because while it does increase the body's energy because it doesn't have to deal with digestion, which is a huge stress on the body, it has more energy to do whatever it wants with. I think it kind of depends on what it's detoxing. I think it can enhance the detox of a lot of various most toxicants, but potentially not heavy metals, especially not right away. And because heavy metals are really different than all the other toxins, because heavy metals are similar in structure to essential minerals. So a lot of times the body will hold on tightly to heavy metals when you're fasting, So there was a study in some animal where after it was like after 16 or 18 hours of fasting, the retention of both of minerals and heavy metals was up to 10 times as strong in the cells of these heavy metals and minerals. So, and it makes sense because if you're, go 18 hours without eating and you're not doing that regularly, then your body says, okay, I don't know when my next meal is going to be. So then it goes into survival mode. And the body's going to stop releasing all the minerals and things because it says, I don't know how long this is going to have to last me. And because minerals and metals are very similar in structure, it also stops letting go of the metals. So I think at least for short-term fasting, it's probably not going to be that effective for heavy metals, at least the heavy metals that are in tissue. For the heavy metals that are already exposed and kind of floating around, those are probably going to be easily flushed out. But then after a couple of days of that, or a day or however long it takes, then your body might not be willing to let go of the metals in tissue if it's still kind of in that survival mode. And then maybe after, if you're doing a longer term fast, maybe after, I'm just guessing 7 days or 10 days or maybe longer, then the body says, okay, I'm getting comfortable. I'm kind of in this state. And then maybe it starts releasing, or maybe it doesn't. So I don't know, but it's just one thing I always mention because people always assume that fasting is immediately going to just start getting rid of all these heavy metals. But most people are not doing very extended fasts. Usually they're 3 days or 7 days or whatever. And I don't think those are going to be very effective at removing heavy metals. Not saying they're not effective at detox, because heavy metals are just one of the many things that we have stored in our bodies. And because the other things like the plastics and the glyphosate and the environmental toxicants are not similar to minerals, the body's probably willing to let those go. So, and I don't know, and that's just a theory. I mean, it also is possible that the body is releasing metals more rapidly. I think it's just going to be dependent on the person, but it's just I always throw that other side of the coin just to get people thinking.
Yeah, perfect. Controversial question, not that any of the other ones aren't, but um, and feel free not to answer if you don't feel comfortable. But over the last 5 years, we've been through a period of time which was pretty chaotic and turned everyone into a virologist and this, that, and the other, myself included, to the best of my ability. But one of the things that has really hit the sort of the natural headlines, so to speak, is parasites. And ivermectin has become quite prior to the last 5 years. People knew about ivermectin pretty much for certain diseases over in Africa for parasites, but not so much. And obviously, if you own a farm and you've got horses and cattle, ivermectin is part of the protocol for anti-parasitic medicines. So where does zeolite fall into place when it comes to things like parasites as well? Does it deal with them? What's your take on parasitic overload, or should we be concerned about this? And is zeolite a tool to help with us, or are our parasites perfect that we have in us?
Yeah.
I know it's a big question, but
Yeah, no, it is. It's super important, and I kind of go back and forth. But I think the thing to consider is always why do you have the parasites? So usually we get some sort of test, or we say, oh, we start freaking out because oh, the parasites there and they're bad, but why? Right? So they're it's kind of tricky. If for up until like 4 or 5 years ago, I never wanted to kill parasites because I figured potentially they were there as a protective mechanism, like a lot of microbes, right? So consider this. If and I always try to think of an animal. What's an animal that no one likes in Australia?
what's an animal that no one likes? I don't know. You're asking the wrong person. I love them all. So, but I, I guess a lot of tourists that come to Australia are fearful of the sharks and the crocodiles and the spiders and the snakes.
Okay, let's go with crocodile. All right. These things are ferocious. So we have a crocodile that dies of whatever. And then all of a sudden it becomes, a few days later, it's just infected with all these microbes, all, viruses, parasites, bacteria, yeast, all this stuff overgrowing on it. And then the question is, did all of those microbes come from outside, or were those microbes living inside of the crocodile its whole life? But now that the crocodile died, they now have the opportunity to activate and thrive and turn into more pathogenic, dangerous forms. I think that's what happens, right? That happens with any animal when they die. It's not that all these things are coming from it out. So that's the interesting thing is we have all these microbes in our bodies naturally occurring, and that's healthy. Like people are, kind of afraid of germs now, but we have so much bacteria, so many parasites, viruses, bacteria, just all this stuff is naturally occurring in our body. The question is, it's a question of balance, right? So certain things will transform into more dangerous forms when the environment is right. So all of these things that we're afraid of are called opportunistic infections. Like parasites are opportunistic infections, meaning they need an opportunity to cause harm. So really, for long-term solutions, the question is, what is the opportunity that allowed them to be there, and how do we remove that so they don't keep coming back? So that's my problem with the protocols is we can kill these things, but usually they end up back where they started 3 months later because we didn't remove the opportunity. And then taking it a step further from there, the question is, are they actually helpful? Like, are they overgrowing to actually combat some sort of toxicity? Because parasites will like consume heavy metals. So maybe if you have a heavy metal overload, maybe the parasites are naturally reproducing in our bodies because they're actually protecting us. Maybe the candida is overgrowing because it's protecting us against the mercury, etc. So then if we go and we start killing those microbes because we just think, oh, they're all bad, then they're releasing all these heavy metals and other toxins and poisoning us and making us even worse. So a lot of people, and I'm probably kind of there, is I think we should at least be working on the metals and the toxins first. And then if there's leftover microbes that we no longer need because we've detoxed, then we can kill them off. But I think if we just start killing them off right away, it can be potentially harmful because now we're left over with these heavy metals and other things. So it's just so tricky. But I mean, there's a book called The Epidemic of Absence where it talks about like these tribal regions where people just have incredibly high levels of giardia and parasites that we would consider very dangerous, but they have no symptoms. They're perfectly fine. So it's not the giardia that's causing the symptoms. It's the environment or it's the imbalance of giardia to other microbes that are allowing it to thrive. And we're attributing it to antibiotic use, where when you have the antibiotics, it just wipes out all your good stuff. So the bad stuff thrives. So it's interesting. I don't know. I have periodically done the parasite cleansing because I just go back and forth because a lot of people do feel so much better when they do it. So I'm not against it. I just think we have to ask if the problem comes back after a parasite cleanse, what is the opportunity that allowed it to come back? If it just is gone forever, then probably maybe you picked up a parasite, too much parasite from something. Maybe you were having a stressful couple of weeks, and that was the opportunity that weakened your immune system and allowed the parasites to thrive. But then once you kill them off and your immune system was back to normal, you're good to go, maybe. So it's a very good question. That's probably the best I can do for now with the answer.
I love the way that you answer these questions because all I'm getting from you is beautiful common sense. It's which is rare these days. I shouldn't say rare, but
Not so
it's
common.
yeah, yeah, because when we have to fight against everything, and this is a metaphor for life, fighting against the agenda or the elites or the tyranny, and then fighting against the parasites that are in us and fighting against everything. We're constantly in this state of stress, because we think everything is coming to get us. But the question is, as you so beautifully put, is what has created the environment for these things to thrive, whether it be a tyrannical government, whether it be mainstream media with their propaganda. What has created the environment for these mechanisms or these parasites, if we want to call some of them parasites, um, to thrive? And, once we can use common sense, I think there's some very simple solutions instead of having to fight everything, just
So,
just by contemplating and asking ourselves some deeper questions. Sorry,
and I
please
will
go.
say, no, one thing that's interesting is that zeolite's not designed for parasites, but a lot of people report passing parasites when they start taking ZeoCharge. So, and a lot of people think, oh, it must be going and directly killing them, but I don't think it is. I think it's just the indirect effect where it's removing the metals and the other things, cleaning up the environment, helping remove the opportunity, then the parasites just leave on their own. So I
Yeah.
talked to someone the other day, and she said almost all of her clients are passing parasites on it. And
What?
it's very interesting because around the full moon is when parasites are most active in the body. So the hormones kind of get shifted. We have more serotonin, less melatonin, kind of things just shift around the full moon, and it provides an environment for parasites to kind of move around and lay eggs and whatever they do. So a lot of people are more symptomatic around the full moon in general, especially if they have a high parasite load. And when like 2 days before the full moon hits is when I always receive like 5 times as many emails as the rest of the month of people complaining about detox symptoms, right? So a lot of this happens all the time. People are on ZeoCharge for 2, 3 weeks, no symptoms at all. And then 2 days before the full moon, they get some sort of symptom. Then they reach out like, oh, I can't take the product. It's terrible. And then I'm like, well, just, wait 3 days, you'll be fine. And they always are. So, but that's just another indicator that it is helping release the parasites. So one thing, if someone listening is very sensitive to detox or afraid of some sort of reaction, don't start taking it 2 days before the full moon. Wait till 2 days after, because you're much more likely to experience a reaction during that time. And also, if you take it first thing in the morning on an empty stomach, you're much more likely to experience a detox reaction than if you take it after a meal or in the evening. And I think a lot of that is attributed to, once again, the parasite release, because the parasites the detox effect of zeolite is much stronger on an empty stomach, because the parasite, just any anti-parasite protocol is generally stronger on an empty stomach because the parasites are hungry and they're kind of looking for food. So kind of interesting. But yeah, so that's where like some people will take a ZeoCharge and then an anti-parasite protocol because they're removing the opportunity, cleaning up the environment, and they're killing directly. So it's a two-step approach. But then a lot of people just take ZeoCharge and they're cleaning up the environment. And then over time, the parasites just start leaving on their own. So I think the zeolite approach, or at least some sort of detox binding approach, is number one. And then if people want to add on to that with an anti-parasite protocol, because maybe sometimes they do need it, especially stubborn parasites, that's great. But I think just going straight into the parasite cleansing, potentially, especially if your body's not working properly, might be not the best idea, because then you're going to be exposed to more toxicity from the release of whatever the
Yeah.
parasites are holding.
Awesome. I like that full moon thing. Sometimes I have, I struggle whenever I wake up in the middle of the night. It's always around the full moon. I'm like, what the fuck's going on? Like, why am I awake? Oh, that's right. It's the full moon. But maybe it's the parasites having a party.
There's something to it. I mean, something definitely happens around the full moon. I mean, there's no denying that. There's probably a number of factors, but yeah, that I hear that all the time is people sleep great, 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 and then one day a week they can't, one night a month they can't sleep, and it's the full moon.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's interesting.
I think I already know the answer to this next question, but I feel like it's important. Mental health, depression, anxiety, Alzheimer's, dementia. What have you discovered in regards to that and zeolite? And are you open to discussing that, or is that a totally separate thing that you stay away from?
I mean, usually I don't discuss. I mean, I always say I don't. It's not, the FDA disclaimer or whatever. It's not designed to
Yeah.
treat, cure, all that stuff, right? But
Yep.
I never look at ZeoCharge as being used for anything specific. I always look at it as being just a broad spectrum binder that's removing stress on the body, and then your body can have the energy to start dealing with what it needs to deal with. So that's why it has such a broad range of benefits for people, because it just depends on what the body needs. So in theory, I mean, it can really help with almost anything if it's reducing the stress load on your body, right? So I mean, and we know that a lot of neurological issues are caused by toxins of some, mercury, various other toxins. So in theory, by removing those toxins or toxins from your body, there's going to be improvement in symptoms, right? So I don't think there's been any research done on zeolite and Alzheimer's or any neurodegenerate disease, but we certainly know that there's definitely heavy metals, mercury, and things that are definitely contributing to those conditions. So by removing those is probably going to be helpful.
Can you talk about anecdotal stories, or is that a no-no? Like
Yeah,
people feeling better,
yeah,
emotionally better, more mental clarity, these types of things. And
yeah.
I'm not trying to
No,
put
no.
you in a corner here, and I don't think the FDA is going to be listening to this as well.
Yeah,
And
it's
and
fine.
and
Yeah,
but
it's So yeah, I mean, one of the number one symptoms people do report is a lift in mental clarity and reduction in brain fog. So, and I think that's what's happening. And it's not that, because everyone always thinks direct, like, oh, the zeolite's going into my brain and removing things. Like that's not, most of the brain fog is not happening from things in your brain. It's happening from things in your gut that are causing the brain fog types of thing. Even ammonia, which I mentioned earlier, and that zeolite has one of the strongest bonds to ammonia of anything. Ammonia, if your liver's not working properly, then your body's not going to process the ammonia well. And then you get a buildup of ammonia. It can go to your bloodstream and it's been shown to cross the blood-brain barrier and actually poison you and cause the brain fog and issue. So just by binding to the ammonia, that could be one reason. Binding to lipopolysaccharides is huge as well. So lipopolysaccharides are the toxins released by some of the bacteria in your gut, and those are one of the main causes of brain fog. Uh, and so if you have brain fog, especially after you eat a meal, especially a higher carb meal, there's a good chance you have some sort of microbial imbalance and you're having this production of these endotoxins that are kind of poisoning you. So ZeoCharge has been shown to bind to those things. So just by binding to certain things that are in one way or the other, whether they're going to the brain or causing an immune reaction, causing brain fog, it tends to help with that. Um, and then long-term brain function, a lot of people report that usually it's someone else that tells them. Because a lot of times when you have these gradual effects over 3 months, you don't notice that you're getting better. So when you are removing mercury and things from your brain, a lot of times you don't realize how much better you're feeling until your spouse or someone tells you type of thing, or you stop taking and you feel worse sometimes. But um, and quickly, and I'm going to get back to that. If you feel worse when you stop taking it after a few months, generally that's because it's combating something that you're faced with daily that's causing stress on your body. So if you stop taking it and you feel worse, generally the zeolite, the benefit, the symptom improvement that you were experiencing was from the zeolite binding to something that was stressing out your body every day. And when you stop taking the binder, it goes back to stressing out your body. So that's one important thing for people.
Yeah.
But back to the long-term removal. So a lot of people will report like, oh, my husband just said that, I'm recalling names better and all this stuff. So lots of stuff with memory. I would say personally, probably it's definitely one of the best things for that kind of condition, memory enhancement and various things, just because usually there's some level of toxicity involved with memory issues. And even if it's not stored toxins, a lot of times it's some sort of, exposed, like the biotoxins or something, or mycotoxins is a huge thing that could be contributing to brain fog and mental issues. And the zeolite binds to mycotoxins as well. So just binding to something that's causing neurological issues, I think the zeolite has a high potential for. One of the other things that people notice with zeolite is going to be digestion. So it's interesting because one of the main concerns with like binders, so binders are like activated charcoal, bentonite clays, and all these other things. ZeoCharge is kind of like a next generation version of those. It's not really a clay, it's actually a mineral that's ground up into superfine powder. So it looks like a clay, but it's different. It's got a lot more surface area, it's got a lot more binding capacity. And one of the benefits of it as well is not only is it not binding the negative stuff. So like charcoals and stuff just go and grab everything, and that's why they're fantastic for short term, but usually you don't want to take those things long term because they could cause nutrient deficiencies. Zeolite works by a swap mechanism. So it swaps minerals that it already has in its cage for more toxic elements that are heavier. So that's why you can take high doses of zeolite and it actually generally improves your mineral status and vitamin status opposed to depleting it like all the other binders. And that's work that
Wow.
because it's not just grabbing, it's swapping. It works by a swap mechanism. So that's one thing that's super interesting. But to the point that I'm trying to make, I'm just getting distracted with multiple other things I thought we should cover.
I
Uh,
love it.
is that a lot of the other binders are very constipating, so people can't really take them, and if they take more, they get more constipated. Whereas with ZeoCharge, it generally tends to be have more relaxative effect for people. So one of the main reasons people stay on it, they buy it for detox and then they stay on it because it keeps their digestion regular. Now, that's not always the case. Some people do find it a little constipating. It just really depends on what's going on in the body, but that's something that's kind of interesting. So some sort of digestion shift are things people notice. If you're getting diarrhea from it, that's probably a sign you're expelling something that you want to expel, and that's a good detox symptom. You want to get that stuff out of your body, and that should stop after a week or so. Um, so mental clarity, I think the biggest for me, and just what I think in terms of benefits of zeolite, I think the biggest benefit is actually immune regulation
Mm.
because because what I used to sell is just basically immune regulators, like really high quality immune regulators. And The problem is they're just helping support your immune system to deal with the toxicity it's facing every day, but it's not removing the source of the toxicity. With ZeoCharge, you're going in and you're binding the things that are causing the immune system to be overactive. And by binding those, your immune system naturally balances on its own. And you're getting to the root cause. So that's like the symptoms management, you're binding what your body's processing. And then it's also removing the deeply stored metals. So it's like a root cause and a symptoms management. So I think zeolite, when people are tolerating it well and it's making them feel better, the immune system benefits are probably the better than almost anything else. Um, and it's all based on how you respond to it. So that's interesting. And it goes back to dose because people could have the opposite reaction. Let's say that you could feel better or you can feel worse on it. If you're taking it for a month and you feel worse, then it's probably causing some level of stress on your body. And there's so many mechanisms, it's hard to say what that could be. If you're feeling better on it, it's probably reducing the stress load on your body. So if you're feeling better on it, you can probably keep taking it for quite a while. And then if you go off of it and you feel worse, you've added stress back to your body by going off of it. But if you're feeling worse on it, then you probably want to go on and off of it and take breaks to let your body recover, like other detoxes. So it's all about how you respond to it. Very interesting. But weight loss,
And
go
you've
ahead.
got this information on the website for people as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's a lot of information on the website. There's one of the blogs has good info, but then there's an education tab that has a lot of videos that had all sorts of information. There's also a case studies page, which prior to launching, we did a 6-month case studies program where we just tested a bunch of people because we wanted to see what the ZeoCharge was able to do before launching it onto the market. Because I mean, in the industry, there's just tons of claims and everyone says, it's never going to deplete minerals. It's never going to do any of this stuff, but there was none of them could really prove it. So we wanted to kind of prove it. So we did that. Um, because there's all these companies that are utilizing some of the consensus research, but
Yeah.
their products are completely different than what's been used in studies. So when you have like
Yeah.
these nano zeolites, which are completely different, or synthetic zeolites, or liquid zeolites, which have thousands of times less the dose, they're citing all the research for powdered zeolite supplements. But you can't use that research because it's a completely different product.
Yeah,
So,
of
and just for
course.
reference on the dose, like a lot of the liquids have so with our height, we have a protocol where you start with 6 jars per month. It's a 5-month protocol. You do 6 jars per month, which is 6 scoops per day for the first month. Second month, you do 5 scoops, then 4, then 3, then 2. So the goal is the healthier you become, the less you need. You start high and you work down. Um, the 6 scoop dose is exactly 100,000 times the dose of most of the liquid and nano zeolite supplements.
Gotcha.
So those
Wow.
have 300 micrograms, less than 1 milligram per serving, and this is 30 grams. So just to give you a perspective, like the dose, that's why even if there's really good quality liquid products, a lot of times you're not going to get the best results, or it's going to be an inefficient detox because the dosing, because there's only so much zeolite you can fit in a little glass of water type of thing, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and some are nano, which are a little bit different as well, and potential safety concerns. We just don't recommend them.
Yeah.
Uh,
And obviously y- your protocol is larger dose titrating down instead of yeah, I get that. You were talking about weight loss before and fascinated about weight loss and also weight gain, for people that struggle to put on weight.
yeah.
Could you talk about that?
Sure. So with weight loss, and this goes back to the fasting. I forgot that I was going to mention this during the fasting comment as well. But one of the ways metals can definitely be mobilized during a fast is that if you're losing fat, then because the fat is storing these toxic elements. So if you are losing fat, that's one way the metals probably are going to be released during the fast. And then if your body's not in a very good position, then some of those metals might redistribute and find a new home in some other fat if your body can't safely excrete them. So that's another benefit of taking zeolite during a fast or during any weight loss protocol. So I tell people if they're on a weight loss protocol or they want to lose weight, you want to be taking some sort of binder because as you're mobilizing these heavy metals from fat, because the fat is a storage unit for the heavy metals. So if the storage unit is opened, then the metals are released. And if your body can't release them all, they're going to go find another area to hide. So taking a binder like ZeoCharge is going to help escort them out the body before they redistribute. And also it can help you lose weight because it goes back to the body's priorities and the body's designed for homeostasis and self-preservation. sometimes the body won't allow you to lose fat or lose weight because you have a high toxic burden. So if you have tons of heavy metals in your fat, your body is going to be resistant to letting you let go of the fat because then those metals are going to be mobilized. And if you can't get them out, the metals might end up in organs.
Oh,
Which is so having the metals in general fat is not that bad, but if you have the metals in organs, that's where it's way worse because they're deteriorating the organ. So
gotcha.
that's why a lot of people get quite ill when they're on weight loss protocols because they're losing weight, which is housing all these toxic elements like the heavy metals and toxins, and then they're just finding a new home. And another, a lot of very, very thin people are much more prone to heavy metal toxicity than heavier people because they have less of a storage unit. So I'm
Hmm.
not advocating for that, but it's just something to consider. A lot of people that are thinner might need to detox more than even the heavier people because they don't have the capacity to hold the metals because it's all going to organs because they don't have the belly fat. So that's
Gotcha.
kind of interesting as well. So for weight loss, I would say ZeoCharge is helpful in that one, it can support a weight loss journey by binding to some of the heavy metals that are being released, so to prevent it from poisoning you, and then also by reducing some of those heavy metals before weight loss, so that then your body's more willing to let go of the fat because you don't need the fat. Because if the fat's a protective layer, if the metals are gone, it doesn't need to be a protective layer anymore, then the body lets go of it. So a lot of people that are plateaued in their weight loss journey take ZeoCharge and it does help them lose weight. Some people also report gaining weight. So it
Hmm.
really just depends. I mean, it's when you have a lot of times when you have issues with weight gain or weight loss, I mean, a lot of it has to do with diet, but sometimes a lot of it doesn't have to do with diet, right? It has to do with a lot of other things, and it's just the body is keeping the fat levels high or low for a certain reason. So as the body starts coming into balance, then your body's going to start regulating its levels of everything. So that's just why I call ZeoCharge a foundation for pretty much every other protocol, right? So it's not a substitute. It's not I just like to call it a foundation because it's going to make everything else work better. It's probably going to make your food more nutritious because as you're removing the toxic elements that are competing for space with the minerals in your cells, it's going to make the absorption of the nutrients better in the food and everything. So it's just a good foundation to build upon for pretty much any protocol. It's the way I look at it.
Beautiful. Two more questions at the moment. First one is contraindications. Uh, who should not probably or who shouldn't be taking zeolite? Is it just pregnant women, or are there others along the path?
Yeah, I would say pregnant women for sure. And that is one thing. A lot of the other companies and a lot of the zeolite companies are network marketing, which has kind of grown the industry, but it's also put a lot of bad information out there. So like a lot of them are saying like, oh, it's perfectly safe to take when you're pregnant because it's got this cage and it can never cause a detox symptom. And it's just ridiculous stuff that's being claimed out there. So you have to be really careful with some of the information on zeolite because when you're detoxing, so many things can happen. I mean, you're stirring stuff up, any number of things can happen. And generally, when you're pregnant, it's not the time to start a detox journey, right? So definitely we say don't take it when you're pregnant. Nursing, we also say don't take it when you're nursing just because of lack of research. That's one to kind of talk about with if you're working with like a functional practitioner or something, ask if maybe that's okay, but we just say no on that one. And then other contraindications, it will bind to antibiotics. So if you're taking like a synthetic antibiotic, then you don't want to take zeolite at the same time because it'll bind to it and make it less effective. It's also going to bind to like chemo and radiation. So you like if you're taking any like something for a serious condition that's like a seriously powerful thing like chemo, radiation, or antibiotics, you probably don't want to be taking zeolite at the same time because it's going to interfere with those things because it's binding to those things.
Gotcha.
So that goes into medications. There's very limited research on med interactions with zeolite. So we always just say, I mean, check with your doctor, but they're not going to know. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a tricky thing. But if you're going to take the zeolite and you're going to take whatever else you're taking, just take the zeolite as far away as you can. So if you're
Yeah.
taking medications once a day, take zeolite on the opposite end of the day. If you're taking medications twice a day, take zeolite in the middle, right? So kind of let the medications do their work for a few hours and then take the zeolites. So the
Yeah.
main issue with medications is that you're going to want to monitor, various biomarkers in your body because, like, first example, people taking the thyroid meds for underactive thyroid, a lot of times they have to lower their dose of the thyroid med. It's not necessarily because the zeolite's directly interacting with the thyroid med, but if the zeolite is removing mercury or something from the thyroid gland, and the body starts naturally producing the thyroid hormones better, you might have to adjust the med dose. So stuff like that is really important to consider. Insulin as well. A lot of people have to lower their insulin doses. So just whenever you're starting something as powerful as zeolite, you want to just consider other things might have to be adjusted that you're taking. In terms of taking it alongside supplements, I say anything natural you can take it at the same time. So if you're taking like algae or other natural supplements, it's okay to take together. If you're taking synthetics, then whether they're supplements or meds, just take them a little bit away. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the guidance there. And then the other things is if you have some concern, just it's always better not to take it if you think it's going to have a negative interaction, you're scared of it. I always tell people like just don't do it because then the placebo effect is going to come into play and it's probably not going to be good for you, right? So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's kind of just due to limited research, it's kind of tricky to know with drug and med interactions. But the big ones are going to be like the pregnancy, don't take it. One question a lot of people ask is like, what if I have the silver amalgam fillings in my mouth? And I mean, probably half the people taking ZeoCharge, which is a lot of people, have the amalgam fillings in their mouth. So
Wow.
we've never had any issues because the mercury and silver that the zeolite is going to be binding to is going to be the loose floating metal
Yeah.
ions that otherwise would have been released and redistributed into your body anyway. So it's not going to be something. I mean, I wouldn't be like holding the zeolite in your mouth for 3 minutes or something, but just swallowing it down is probably going to be okay. I don't think it's not going to be strong enough to go in and like rip apart some sort of metal structure that's tightly bound. It's just going to be, I mean, if the amalgam's 60 years old and it's falling apart, maybe it would contribute to the degradation of it. So that'd be kind of the only concern. But other than that, it's probably fine. Like titanium implants and things like in your bones, it shouldn't directly interact with any of those things. The only concern would be if by removing the toxic elements that your body's processing and then increasing your body's detox energy, if your body then decides it wants to start rejecting the titanium implant for some reason, it could start kind of chipping away at it on its own.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never seen that either, but that would be kind of the thought process. So like if you've got something like that and you're super concerned, just you don't have to take ZeoCharge forever. Just, doing a few months or something should be fine. But those are just things that are kind of unknown. I like to mention them though, just things to think about.
Beautiful. Last question for you is pets, dogs, cats, our very little friends. Zeolite, yes or no? Because the reason I ask is so many people's pets these days, um, for numerous reasons, whether it be the way that they're bred is one reason that some of these pets have some pretty major health issues. And number two, a lot of people are feeding these animals some pretty horrendous diets and potentially not getting them in nature much, a lot, or around all the toxic exposures that we are as well, especially pets that live in cities and things like this, where just being assaulted daily. Um, what have you found out about pets and zeolite?
Yeah, I think generally it's going to be a great idea. So I mean, I don't have reports on zeolite for every pet. I would assume generally it's going to be kind of like indiscriminate. It's probably going to work for everyone because the thing about zeolite, and this is important to mention, it's not when I say mineral, it's not a bioavailable mineral that's going to go in and be like utilized for cellular functions. So it's not like a calcium or a magnesium or something, right? It's just this mineral structure that goes through, doesn't break apart. It doesn't like go into your cells and is used for anything. It's just going through, grabbing stuff and leaving. So that's one thing to consider. So with that in mind, taking animals and everything, it just kind of passes through and it leaves and it grabs whatever is there. Dogs, and there is a number of research studies on animals as well with zeolite, especially dogs, like in cancer and things. So dogs, fantastic. A lot of people use it for their cats. I think a few people have used it for their birds. Not sure. Horses for sure. A lot of people use it for horses. So before zeolite was approved for human use, it was used in animal feed, and it still is. So they like for dairy cows or cattle, any sort of barn animal really, because it helps bind to the mycotoxins in the animal feed and kind of helps reduce ammonia levels, and it's very helpful. There was a study on chickens taking zeolite, and it was like increasing egg production. It was improving antioxidant levels, glutathione, superoxide dismutase. It was like helping with all these things in the chickens. So it's been studied in a number of animals, all positive reports. And one thing I'll say about that as well, because people are always concerned, oh, is this going to be depleting my essential minerals like all the other things? And it doesn't, as long, I mean, it would, if it does deplete your essential minerals, it would be an indirect effect where the detox is stressing out your body and then minerals are kind of altered based on that, but it's not directly like going into your cells and binding minerals or anything. So to, and we can show that from our case studies program, but also in the animal studies, when they take the zeolite, it's always mixed with the animal feed. So zeolite can be taken with food, it doesn't have to be in an empty stomach, and it still improves the nutrient levels in the animal's blood. So not only is it not by depleting it, it's actually improving nutrient levels. So yeah, for animals, I would say yes. We do have a couple of holistic veterinarians that do recommend it to their dog and animal clients as well, because they say it's just they're so toxic from the injections that they're they have to get to go to the dog parts, and then just the various pesticides that are used on the lawns that they're sniffing around and
Mm,
all that
yeah.
stuff. So they say that it's very helpful for the animals.
Beautiful. Jeff, what a wonderful conversation, right? I have a brother. It's so good to speak to someone with so much common sense. And yeah, I love you, brother. I really appreciate you spending the time talking to a chef on the other side of the world. And I'll send you this interview and just stoked. And I'm going to be ordering some of your product and I'll let you know my anecdotal stories.
All right. Oh, fantastic. No, it was a lot of fun.
Awesome, brother. You have a beautiful day and we'll speak soon.
All right, sounds good.